liquidity, hodl nana, dump it all. Crypto nana, exit liquidity, hodl nana, dump it all.
Crypto nana, exit liquidity,
dump it all.
hodl nana, dump it all.
Nana, exit liquidity, hodl nana, dump it all. Crypto nana, exit liquidity, hodl nana, dump it all.
From the day we arrive on the blockchain and blinking step into the trade, there's more to lose than can ever be won, more to dump than can never be saved. Influencers, tweets, and the noobs all follow, buying high, selling low, what a game. But the boomers know, and Sailor, he knows that the dump is coming. It's all the same. It's the circle of exit liquidity, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and FOMO, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of exit liquidity. Some of us fall by the wayside, and some of us soar to the stars. But the influencers always win with the Lambos and their cars. So beware of the pump and the inevitable dump, for the cycle continues and the news get wrecked. Nana, exit liquidity, hodl nana, dump it all. Crypto nana, exit liquidity, hodl nana, dump it all. Crypto nana, exit liquidity, dump it all. hodl nana, dump it all. It's the circle of exit liquidity, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and FOMO, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of exit liquidity. Dump it all.
So, hey everyone, happy Friday. Just getting this show going. We have a lot to talk about. I mean, I kind of teased with the ColdCard stuff, and Vlad said, oh, that's old news. And it's, well,
No, it's last week.
yeah, which is old news in this, like right now. It's the thing is, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I kind of think you deserve a lot of... you deserve the fact that I'm only basically queuing up your tweets for most of this thing, because no one's been more thorough these days. And then we have other things that have happened lately, like the BTC Pay server issue that landed, what, 3 hours ago or so? And I know a lot of payment infrastructure does that. Anyway, and I'm going to bring that up later, but yeah, I have a tweet from Zach Herbert from 2 p.m. about they had some issues with it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any. I think we can just hit the official intro graphic and then get going on this because there's lots to talk about. What do you think?
I think I want to start by mentioning that Zcash was very much ahead of its time with the fact that they tested their software so quickly and they found issues with Orchard. And Zuko, I remember he tweeted something along the lines of the security doomsday is here. And people were laughing at him, of course, because they're like, ha ha ha, you're such an idiot. You didn't have the code base audited well enough and you found this code. And of course, our pure version of the code is perfect and we have the best experts and you guys are shitcoiners and whatever. And now it seems like a month later, we're getting a lot of this coming to some of the most sacred Bitcoin projects. And people are already talking about the death of toxic Bitcoin maximalism, which is something.
That's me.
Like,
I'm people.
no, it's not just you. It's also people who are part of the movement, very much so.
Yeah.
And they realize that there is no saint in this movement, right? Like, it should have been obvious. I've seen this maybe since 2018 or something, when people were virtue signaling about holding no shitcoins, and then you had people like Francis Pulio who was like, "Oh, I just sold my Ethereum," and people were like, "Oh, you had Ethereum?
Yeah.
Like, how?" And
Never even had
Giacomo
Ethereum.
Zucco was like the high priest preaching about, using anyone telling you to use Bitcoin is a scammer or something, and he was offering consultancy to Ethereum ICOs or whatever, like whatever project was going to his company. He was like, yeah, sure, I'll consult you in doing this. Of course, I'll take your money. So there was a lot of hypocrisy from the beginning, but now it got revealed that these people who are telling you, yeah, you should buy this ColdCard and it's the most safe and it's air gapped and you got to connect a 9-volt battery to it because this way you never connect it to your computer and it never touches the internet and whatever. And people got drained because it had very weak random number generation. And
Yeah.
it should have been obvious in hindsight, but on the other hand, it seems like everyone was blinded by the ideology and the marketing. The marketing worked so well that on one hand, people didn't care enough to look at the code. On the other hand, there was no incentive to look at the code. By day, I mean the ColdCard guys, there's only a couple of them who are relevant. I think the others are just salesmen who work. Maybe they have 10 employees, 2 of them are devs. And these 2 people were really aggressive with whoever was reporting security issues. They never gave out bounties, as in seriously paying them. They would send out mugs and cold cards to people who were finding serious issues, and they would say, oh, it's not serious. It's just you got lucky finding that one. And of course, the security community didn't care. I remember I posted about this guy, Salim Rashid, who is this
I know that
Indian
guy.
genius who hacked, I think, pretty much every hardware wallet under the sun or found some vulnerability. And at some point in 2022, he sent reports to everyone except for ColdCard because he knew that ColdCard doesn't pay. I was like, why should I bother with these guys? And it just goes to show that open source licenses do have their own advantage. The fact that you're being copied by your competition is a way of becoming stronger as a code base. Maybe not
almost like a
good for
superpower.
business. It could be a superpower. But for people who want to be monopolists and they just want to make money, it's really not great. I mean, even Trezor at some point in their darkest hour, I think this was 2014 or something, they decided to stop being open source for a couple of months because they were being copied by another Chinese manufacturer that was selling the same device essentially for much cheaper than they could produce it. And it seemed like their business is not going to work. So it is difficult, I get that. But in this industry, you got to have standards. And if we don't respect any standard and it's just pure marketing, and every other Bitcoin podcaster except for me was, or at least one time collaborated with ColdCard and did videos, content. They had Rodolfo as a regular at least once per year. they were talking about how this is the purest, the nicest wallet out there. Look what happened. And it's really unfortunate. More than 1,500 Bitcoin was lost. These guys basically woke up, they did everything that they were told about self-custody. They were as paranoid as these guys tried to tell them to be. And then they woke up one day and saw that their funds are gone.
Yeah, the wages of sin or death, as they say, right? That's what happens. Let me hit the intro thing, and then we'll start going over the actual stuff. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. There we go. So now we're officially live, started, whatever. Welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown, episode 231 with the one and only Vlad Costea. How's it going, man?
Hi, it's good to be back. It's good to be back after you were on my show, and that was like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And after you listen to this one, also check out our conversation. It was good.
Yes, I think it was a good one. It was like almost 5 hours. I can't see doing this one for 5 hours, but it's plenty. We could if we wanted to, I'm sure. But it's... Yeah, I think the last time you were on my show was like something like 11 months ago or something. It was a long time ago. And I figured what better, like, there's no better thing to bring up right now than, like, Bitcoin is in the news for in the crypto news. BTC in particular is in the news for all the wrong reasons, and many of them are ColdCard related, and I think you're the person who I have had on the show who has the closest connection to any of this kind of stuff. And so that's kind of what we're going into. And so, like, for example, I'm putting up here, you have a post where you said in early 2022, after ColdCard decided to ditch open source GPL for Commons Clause, I called out NVK, and people called him gaslighting about if we were redefine the meaning of open source, all this stuff. So that was time stamped in 2022. Now, were you the only guy that you saw who was calling out and making an issue out of the relicensing?
I think I was the only one who has like a public profile and does a podcast and whatever, and was very much against this move. All the other Bitcoin podcasters were somewhat in good terms with Rodolfo or ColdCard, meaning that some of them were sponsored or others just received some free ColdCards, or they just wanted to be invited to the same conferences or dinners or social events where these guys were going. So I think the ColdCard bug revealed a big fragility in the social layer in Bitcoin, where people just believed that only because they spoke the same jargon and they were just as toxic, they seemed to be aligned in terms of mindset, then it meant that they were, people who could be trusted. They had all of these t-shirts and stickers and hats that said don't trust, verify, but within their own circles, they trusted very much. And unfortunately, everyone paid the price for this. Except for ColdCard. Like, I don't see them being very liable. If anything, I see a bunch of guys still doing damage control and saying, well, they were good guys. I've seen Bruce Fenton say, oh, Rodolfo was such a great guy. Like, he doesn't deserve this. I'm like, he was an asshole. He was an asshole to his competition. He was an asshole to anyone who told him that there's a bug or whatever, or there's something wrong with the product. And he used this affinity mechanism where he was friends with all the right people. He was friends with Jack Dorsey. He was friends with Francis Pouliot. He was friends with everyone in the OpenSats team. And he had Matt Odell and Marty Bent invest in his company with their VC firm, which is called 1031. I'm actually curious because if you look at 1031, it's very difficult to find an investment that's profitable there. Makes you wonder, like, how did these guys get the money and how can they actually stay in business?
Yeah, I mean, the VC model is always interesting to me because the vast majority of these things don't really make money at all. And I'm sure that a lot of them are banking on the couple of unicorns that do. I'm always, in this world, I'm always open to be skeptical of things like that, where maybe there's a form of like laundering going on there. There's a form of, okay, well, we're more than happy to lose money on investments if we gain them in influence, which pays us back more in a different way. So, I mean, I don't know what, in terms of this particular VC firm, what their strategy was, but I'm sure that I'm sure that it lended weight to stuff that they ended up finding valuable in the future, because otherwise they would wind down or change their trajectory, I think.
Oh, I don't know, man. If I was given a lot of VC money, as in tens of millions of dollars to invest, it would be my pride to at least have a couple of profitable ventures. But in this case, like, you take a look at the list and you're like, huh, this one never went anywhere. This one is so and so. I haven't heard about this one since it launched. It's like this. You just look at the list and you're like, is anything that makes money here?
Well, what about CoinKite / ColdCard? I mean, I'm sure that made a decent amount of money before it lost everyone's money, right? Because if you think about it, it seems like it had a relatively small team, and seems like it got a lot of penetration in a very saturated market. Like, a lot of people outside of the maximalist spheres, they're like, I didn't hear about this ever. And then when you look at how much money was on these things, it just like is everywhere. It was a lot of people. So, or at least enough whales. It seems like there's a repeated kind of pleb with like 1 to 20 Bitcoins or something, kind of. You see those stories pop up a lot. So yeah, there was a lot of those kinds of people. Definitely, as highlighted in this thing that you shared from Layer 2 Labs earlier, had all the podcasters on board, basically. And so they must have, I would say they must have been profitable, but I would assume they were profitable.
It's hard to tell. I mean, on one hand, it was like a cult status, or how should I put it? It was the token that proved to the cult that you're one of them. If you posted a picture of the ColdCard and the block clock, and the block clock is the dumbest thing ever. It's a device that you connect to power and to the internet, and then it shows the price. And maybe it also shows like the block height of Bitcoin and the transaction fees, maybe. I don't know. But the point is that you can have an app on your phone, you can open a website on your computer and get all of this information for free. But that item was being sold for like $600 for the original. And then they made the Block Clock Mini, which is $400. And I think they also made a smaller version that was like $250. So it's really crazy that people were spending so much money only to post a picture that they have this, or put that in the background to look cool during their interviews. I think it always looked dumb. And part of perpetuating this, I wouldn't call it a scam. It's just an ingenious kind of selling electronics.
Affinity marketing.
Affinity marketing. Jack Dorsey was part of it, because at some point he was interviewed by some mainstream media channel, and they looked at the block clock behind him, and it showed something that I think was Satoshis per dollar, I think. How many Satoshis you can buy per dollar. And they looked at that and they said, well, that's the Moscow time. And they started sort of a conspiracy that Jack Dorsey holds a clock in his home, or he watches the time in Russia.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
this meme sort of perpetuated and got more people to buy the device. And with ColdCard, like, it was marketed as the best thing ever, the paranoid choice, the cypherpunk's favorite tool, right? Except that I interviewed Peter Todd, who is arguably a cypherpunk. Like, you can disagree with his opinions, but he's good at this stuff. He's good at security. He's been on the internet doing security stuff since he was 12, talking to Hal Finney and Adam Back about how to invent decentralized Zcash. Like, this guy has been around, and I've asked him when he was on my podcast in 2020, February, I think, if he uses a ColdCard, and he was like, why would I use that? He gave me the example of the tiger rock, which means that you buy this rock and it kills tigers. And the question is, are there any tigers around you? Is that a real threat? And usually the answer is no. And it just goes to show that this kind of marketing, which makes you very paranoid about various things, can be so successful, because the legacy of ColdCard, even if it disappears from the market, even though they still sell it, those assholes, like they didn't shut down their shop, they still sell it. And it's for the same price. It's not like they decided to drop the price to $10 or whatever. The legacy is that they spread so much FUD, for example, about USB connections. And they will say, well, something like the Ledger or the Trezor is not safe because the USB stack is so compromised and has so many attack vectors. And they promoted this air gap thing, which means that it's using PSBT, which is a standard for basically signing and broadcasting the transaction separately. You sign on the device and then broadcast online on a separate device, like your computer or phone. And basically what this did was make it harder for people to spend their coins. And if you put on your conspiracy hat and you think that this was all along a plan to steal from people, which is very shady with the Peter, I think his last name is Gray. The guy who was the CTO of the company, like he left so many clues that this could be possible that he could steal.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's very feasible. It is like a exit scam or something. And you also, this one thing with the block clock, as you mentioned, there's that Satoshi quote at the bottom. Lost coins only make everyone else's coins worth slightly more. Think of it as a donation to everyone. What an odd thing to say. And there's so many of those little smoking
so
gun
many
things.
Satoshi quotes, but they chose that one.
Yes, of all the things you could have done.
But when you think about it, it's brilliant, right? If this is like a spook shop, or it's like the pagers that were sold to, what was the country, Lebanon or something, the ones that blew up.
Oh,
When
yeah,
you think
the
when you think
Hezbollah
about
ones.
it like this, it's really brilliant. If they designed it from day one to, on one hand, sell you something which appears to be paranoid but has very weak random number generator, so people think that they hold their coins offline, but in reality they're so easy to steal. And on the other hand, they say they don't hold any customer data, but they sell you this overpriced block clock which you plug into the wall, and then it connects to the servers of CoinKite for software updates. And of course they're going to know your IP address.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, this whole conspiracy thing, I'm kind of 50-50 personally. I tend to be one of those Occam's razor believers where typically if there's a simpler, more straightforward, less convoluted explanation, I try to go with that first. In this case, there's enough evidence where I don't know what I think. In my opinion, there seems to be enough evidence to say this was just a petty, sloppy person or company that just tried to like add a couple of different differences on a Trezor-like product and just sell it to a bunch of hardcores. And they kind of did like a lazy way of getting into the market, and then they lost people's money because of their laziness and their greed on wanting to relicense things. That for me seems perfectly plausible. But also all the things about all the clues along the way, the admissions of guilt, all the way the timelines can sort of match up, all the other things seem to line up with some. So it could be something a little bit sketchy. I do remember. So there is another thing that happened that kind of reminds me of this, as someone's been around the space for a while. The clues you see along the way, including people did lose funds allegedly to ColdCards in the past, but their concerns or whatever were immediately shut down and everything was buried and hidden, and the exploit wasn't fixed. And that kind of leaves some credence to the idea that maybe they knew it all along and were just selectively draining people where they could get away with it, and then they just pick the time to go after everything. It reminds me of back in 2016, I did some article on Cointelegraph about Oasis, one of the darknet markets that Monero is very popular on, getting exit scammed and just taking everything down. So I wrote an article on that, and as always with these old school journalistic articles, they like extra context, like further reading type segments. And so I looked around Reddit, and I noticed there was a massive number of people who were users of MyMonero, which at the time was the only light client for Monero that was run by Fluffy Pony, and revealed the user's incoming transaction view keys at least. And there was just a massive amount of thefts being reported from there all over. And I looked on other subreddits and things, and I could not find anything nearly the same in terms of other projects and other wallets in terms of thefts. And I mentioned that in the article, and immediately Fluffy Pony, who's always hated me, and feeling's been a little mutual, to be honest, immediately wanted an interview. And he did not want... The whole Monero community was mostly upset because I told the truth about what happened with Oasis as just a news story. But also the price crashed like 10-15% in like 10 minutes, because that was back when a single news article actually moved prices back then. So obviously they were upset about that. But Fluffy Pony only cared about the theft part, and I actually got an interview with him after everyone hated me in the Monero world, and they're already doing death threats. I already got an interview with him because he wanted to sort of address that part. And this same individual has later been found to have stolen a lot of things, whether it's in his... He had criminal charges against him, which causes extradition for before being in crypto. And then afterwards, a lot of budgets in the Monero ecosystem that he was in charge of, at least partially had keys to, ended up missing, including the latest one. It basically admitted that he stole it. Like the money was basically the access to it was lost. He was the guy who had access. People asked him about it over the last few months, and within the last month or so, after being pestered, he finally answered something along the lines of, "I worked for free for the Monero community for a very long time. Consider this back pay." So,
wait, that's a tweet? I gotta search.
He did not say that specifically. If you need to dig that up again, I'm gonna have to dig that up. The exact thing that I saw that someone else reported that he said. I have to find it. I think it might have been during a podcast or something, but there was an admission of that. But I will have to look that up, and we'll put it on blast. But the fact that he ran away with, he had control of the money and didn't give it back, and still hasn't, is pretty well documented. I will have to look up the actual thing he said. So what I'm saying is this seems to be a little bit of a corollary here. It seems a little similar to this ColdCard situation, where you have people with... There is an exploit in the tech. Someone knows about how to exploit it, who is in charge of running it, and also knows how much money people have and where they might store it or where they might live, etc. Who knows the extra information. It gets exploited plenty of times over the years, but it's really hush-hush and really kind of pushed under the rug. There could be something to that.
Yeah, I just saw a tweet by Simon Dixon, and this guy is... I mean, to his credit, he's pretty OG. He was there for the first Bitcoin conference, and he has been covering the topic for a long time. But he's also a conspiracy nut, so he's always on the edge of every extreme or every crazy idea. But he did say that everything about the ColdCard situation looks like an inside job. The fact that they found a similarity with two of the contributors, that they were sharing the same PGP key, and the one who inserted the bug. It wasn't even a bug, it was just a way to fall back on a MicroPython way of generating the randomness, which was sort of broken. So they sort of decided that there are too many coincidences, and it doesn't look like any of this was organic. It is possible, as you said, that ColdCard was slowly draining some wallets, maybe one per year, a couple of Bitcoin, so that it seemed like an isolated incident. And they had such a strong cult of followers that anyone saying, well, I just lost my coins, I think this is the fault of ColdCard, there would be like a white cell system that could come up and argue and say, well, you must have done something wrong because my coins are fine. This device is open source, when in fact it really wasn't. And maybe that what happened is that the cost of auditing software has gone down, and now anyone with access to a decent LLM could just look at the code and figure that out. I think Greg Maxwell posted on Reddit that he used Quen version 3.5 with 27 billion tokens, which is something that you can run on any computer that has at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is lots of computers nowadays.
Yeah,
And he was able to find the bug with that one, so it did not require Kimi, because some people said, well, this is a consequence of the Chinese open source AI that's equivalent to Entropic's Fable, or what was it called before Fable? Mythos.
Mythos, yeah.
Yeah, so they said it's basically a consequence of this new AI coming out and becoming widely available, and people just looked at code. But it seems like it's an older issue, and it's possible that those that stole from ColdCard had at least, they were tipped off or had a suspicion. Because why would you look at ColdCard first, as opposed to, I don't know, I see that there's a BTC Pay server issue right now. I think there's more money in BTC Pay server merchants, but maybe it's more difficult to pull that off.
Yeah, the other thing with the BTC Pay stuff, we can get on this in a second, but it might be more of a Lightning specific thing. It is kind of funny how like Lightning architecture can make things different, because I remember I hung out with Sergey of BitRefill a couple months ago in Stockholm, and he was telling me a little bit about their issues. And he's like, well, funny enough, no one touched our Lightning. It's like maybe they couldn't figure out how to make it work. So that's like a security through obscurity kind of argument, I guess, which doesn't always hold up. But yeah, so let me switch around to the BTC Pay thing, because it's actually relatively new. Like it's, I was on calls before this thing, and then in between calls and getting showered and ready to go, I saw this. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So BTC Pay server, which by the way, anyone reading this, please amplify this post, because a lot of the crypto world uses BTC Pay server, and they could be vulnerable. Anyway, it says there is a critical vulnerability being actively exploited on BTC Pay server, which can result in the loss of funds. Please update your BTC Pay server to 2.4.2 by going to admin dashboard, server maintenance, update, and verify the 2.0.4.2 version string in the footer. If you're unable to update right away, turn off your BTC Pay server to prevent unauthorized access until you can update. Thanks for the Bitcoin Red team for responsible security disclosure and for providing details to the address vulnerability. So, which, by the way, congrats to the guys who are doing this stuff. There's an AI-powered team that is going and just doing security audits on everything. Zach Herbert responded and says, what's the best way to contact your team? After that, I noticed Zach Herbert Foundation, right, another hardware wallet, that he posted a post. He said, how many BTC Pay Lightning nodes were swept? Our foundation node was drained overnight by attackers. And he says it's making us wonder now, is it worth the ROI of self-hosting this infra? Which is a shame, because philosophically I prefer to self-host, but from a business perspective this is a major distraction. So they said that their Lightning node got swept overnight, which is not good. Yeah, and I have yet to see how much of this is Lightning related specifically. From my understanding, BTC Pay server does not require any custody, right? Where you can receive payments that go to your own self custody. So there shouldn't be any key access in your BTC Pay server. The only difference would be if you're routing it through some sort of a Lightning node or something. So if I were to, again, I'm under researched on this topic immediately, but I would bet that it is more Lightning specific that this BTC Pay server thing has happened, because I have heard that's the only thing I've heard mentioned on this. But yeah, unfortunate.
I think you could have some security by obscurity situations with Lightning. Right now, if we look at, there's this website 1ml.com, which
Yes, I know that site.
shows that the number of nodes is going down, the number of channels is going down, the network capacity is only 2,681 Bitcoin, which is a lot of money. It's much more Bitcoin than I'll ever have, but for something which gets so much hype. And I used to joke that people were telling me, well, you can't really tell how many transactions you have, and there's a lot of velocity with this Lightning liquidity, and maybe it changes hands like 100 times per day and you don't even know. And I'm like, don't worry, every time there's a Lightning transaction, you see a social media post from an influencer.
Yeah, and I have to say, half of the time, those are from me, because I do occasionally use Lightning where I need to. Like I was at PubKey in New York about a month ago, and they accepted Lightning payments, which is better than fiat. So I was like, all right, can I do it? And then I told people I did, because, I do that. But random thing on the Fluffy Pony thing. I did find where that source was. Let me throw that up on the screen. Just because I do offhandedly talk a lot of smack, and I don't always remember exactly where I saw it, but at least this time it is. So Monero TV at Monero_TV said, this was in February. Did you know it appears that following his resignation from the Monero core team in 2023, Fluffy Pony forgot to hand over the keys to community wallets holding at least 867 Monero. Hopefully this oversight is clarified and resolved soon. And so then on April 8th, after this account had been pestering him a lot, he says, Fluffy Pony finally responds by implying that the money and time he spent on Monero in the early years means that we should stop asking about the missing Monero, or he'll block you, a la Zuko. Where the screenshot that it attaches, what do you say, Fluffy Pony? It's not too late to return the Monero. Let's talk. And he said, high time I blocked you for being an obvious TLA plant. And then he quoted his own, here's some fun early Monero history. There weren't a lot of donations to cover costs, so core contributors would pay for them out of pocket. We tracked all this on a spreadsheet that we still have because we figured one day we'd be able to get it back. So I think in my opinion, I think that strongly implies that he said that he kept a tally of all of money that people had spent or contributions people had done in a voluntary basis, and that not handing over the rest of the money meant he ended up wanting to pay himself for that money. So, well, there you have it. So at least no one's going to be like, this guy's making stuff up because he doesn't like the guy. It's like, no, well, there it is. Right from the pony's
I guess this
mouth.
is your long-term vendetta. I used to have one with ColdCard, but now I feel vindicated.
Yes.
And that, in the first few days, I was like, yeah, I told you so. Yeah, let me dig up this old tweet. Let me prove to you that you were wrong. But now I realize I don't care anymore. There was so much pain and suffering. I wish I was proven wrong with a small theft of maybe 1 Bitcoin or something. I mean, that's still a lot, but I wish this never happened and this was not necessary. But I sort of joked about it in a tweet, and I said, now we finally know how many Bitcoins it takes for these podcasters to stop talking about the ColdCard.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The thing about the vindication thing, one, I can't deny that I do have a petty streak sometimes. Usually I'm nice to people, and it just sometimes there's people who do bad things, and I push back more than I need to, maybe more than is wise. But in this case, I think that it's worth being, petty may not be the right word, maybe it is, but it's worth doing a little bit of a victory lap, because I mean, maybe I'm speaking for just myself here, but I would assume both of us, we we speak truth as we know it when we see it. And if we see something that's off and we say it and we get flack for it, once it turns out that we were right, it's not that, oh, ego, great that we were right. It's more that we need to encourage people to pay more attention to similar voices when they say, you know, it's not just FUD, it's not just salty hater, it's not just that, just to actually pay attention when bad actors are called out. So, like, for example, there was during the early days there was a lot of friction in the Monero and Dash communities, and it's very understandable if they're like, oh, that guy who's into Dash is not into the Monero guy. Like, that doesn't hold much credence. But then in recent years, I've tried a lot more to be, you know, I've been on Monero Talk a bunch of times, spoke at Monerotopia, sponsored it, have a lot of Monero friends, and during that time still don't like Fluffy Pony. Maybe it's about the person, not, you know, the network. And yeah, it turns out it was. Same thing with like the ColdCard stuff. It's not because now, did you ever, you never received an offer for sponsorship by ColdCard, right? You kind of had beef with them before you got going in the podcast stuff pretty intensely, or am I misremembering it?
I think so. I met Rodolfo Novak and VK in person when I was working for Bitcoin Magazine in 2019. I think I was at the Baltic Honey Badger conference, and I interviewed him there, and the very next day I was invited because my second job was that I was managing the social media account of BTSC, which is an exchange that was very popular at the time, but I don't know what happened with it in the meantime. And
They're still BTSC is still operating. In fact, they just added Dash like 3 months ago or something. So they're still
they
around.
used to call it Bitsy. I'm not sure if they still call it Bitsy.
I call it that. Yeah.
But my point is that Bitsy was about to make a partnership with Blockstream to become a member of the Federation, of the Liquid Federation. And they had this very fancy dinner in a restaurant where I think the connection was Samson Mao. And I was invited there. I don't know exactly why, because I felt very out of place. It was a very fancy place, like a French restaurant where they put a lot of effort into the showmanship of serving the food. Like, it had steam that was coming out of your plate, and it had very small bites that you would take, and you had to evaluate it, and they would bring the chicken that they were going to cut, and they asked if anyone wants to drink the blood from the head or something like this. That like they squeezed the head.
It's like a voodoo ritual.
Yeah, it was very strange. But Rodolfo was sitting to my left at the table, and I did see that he was quite histrionic. I think that's the best adjective to describe him. Like, he didn't know how to get attention from people. And he was always bragging about knowing people and saying, yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, I'm connected to the Canadian Central Bank, and I know that they're going to print and there's going to be hyperinflation. Bitcoin's going to go to the moon and whatever. And I was just sitting next to this guy feeling a bit, I was out of place, and because, of course, I would never afford that kind of restaurant or enjoy it. I don't know, it's weird. For me, it's just about eating food, not someone showing off that they have animals that they're sacrificing that they brought from France for some reason. But where was I going? Yeah. He was also making me feel embarrassed, like I didn't want to be there. And maybe that it was this perception of him that made me cautious of his personality, made me not trust him. I guess most people never had this sort of experience, and that's why they heard him on podcasts when he was on PR mode, and he seemed very knowledgeable and very aggressive towards his competition. They probably thought, well, this guy knows what's up, like I'm gonna listen to him.
Yeah, I mean,
But
that kind of
I never got
Yeah.
the allure or the reason why he was so popular. He was trying to be friends with everyone, but I could never trust someone like him. There's something about him that makes me not trust him, and that sort of bled into my relationship with his work and ColdCard and the fact that I never bought a ColdCard. I had one sent to me, I think in November of 2019 when I was writing an article for Bitcoin Magazine, and I've only used it for testing. And I sent a transaction with it. I posted that there was some dust left in there, and I wanted to see if someone stole it. But as it turns out, at the time he was still using the Trezor firmware, so it's fine. It's gonna be there for a long time.
Yeah.
The ColdCard code was not good.
Well, so as we put over here, you said BTC only companies are problematic. They are underfunded and unable to compete without virtue signaling. They also nurture a dismissive attitude towards cryptographic innovation in other projects, thus keeping Bitcoin stagnant and proudly complacent. And so there's just a little bit of the thing, like Trezor, in my opinion, the people involved with Trezor are Bitcoin maximalists, or roughly speaking, they're in that zone. Like they are very Bitcoin forward, and that doesn't prevent them from running a sound business. Same thing with Bitrefill. Although as of recently, I would say that they, but especially Sergey, are much less Bitcoin maxi than before. But at some point, they were definitely maxis who had a good business sense to support whatever pays the bills. These are called serious companies. And when you have a Bitcoin-only company in 2026, that it can't make good economic sense, or it's rare that it does. There are some, like, even things like Strike, for example, even Square. Like Square, even with Jack Dorsey's tons of money, they are, first of all, a fiat-first company. They're overwhelmingly a fiat-first company. And so that makes them not, I guess, maxi in that way, that they process plenty of non-Bitcoin payments. And so they have the luxury to do Bitcoin only kind of for their crypto transactions, except, as far as I know, they do also support stable coins on Solana. I saw something like that as well. In my opinion, it'll be only a matter of time before Square starts to only accept, they start to expand their crypto payment offerings past that. But again, they're a business trying to be profitable. The challenge is when you have a proudly Bitcoin only kind of a company, the signal, in my opinion, signals low quality. It signals that this is like, you want to buy from it because they say they're Bitcoin only, not because they say we have the best product. And I think that the toxic maximalist thing, it started in the in the block size wars, because before then, Bitcoin was always kind of like almost like the Monero attitude of today, where you have a lot of like hardcore privacy people that are all about freedom usage, and even if it's illegal maybe, and are just aggressive with it and constant underdogs and that was Bitcoin's vibe back in the day. And I think that once the usage as money, the actual principles behind it, started to take a back seat, there needed to be something that sort of that came up that replaced that attitude. So it became toxicity. So by being toxic, you signaled that you were strong in these values that founded Bitcoin, but maybe you didn't have to be strong in those values if you're toxic. So a whole generation of Bitcoiners learned that toxic and disagreeable people were probably more trustworthy, whereas in normal society, I would say they were viewed as less trustworthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think they borrowed a lot from the Christian businesses, where they tend to say, well, we are a Christian, family business or whatever, and that gets people to go and buy from that place. Or I think it also worked during the pandemic, during the Black Lives Matter protests, where there were some businesses that were signaling that they are owned and managed by people of color. So I think there's nothing new intrinsically about this. It's just that they knew exactly how to weaponize some labels and terms and a specific kind of jargon that was being used across what they call Bitcoin plebs. And I never quite liked this dichotomy where you have OGs and then you have plebs, and there is nothing in between. If you came later than 2017 and you don't have at least, I don't know, 10 Bitcoin or whatever, then you're automatically a pleb. And I think around 2020 and 2021, you had this Citadel meme, which meant that people were fantasizing about moving to a place where you had Bitcoin only societies, where everyone was a Bitcoiner. And it was like a feudal system where, according to how much Bitcoin you owned, you had a different status. And if you didn't have enough Bitcoin, you couldn't be a nobleman. You would have to learn a trade. You would have to clean toilets. And they were very proud of it. And they were like, yeah, this is it. And I was thinking, it only takes a nation state, one missile, and the whole movement is gone. Like, if you don't have serious army and defense, you're just building on hopium. But some people took it seriously, and they actually bought a lot of land, and they were saying, this is going to be where I build my citadel, and I'm going to invite other people. And then the El Salvador thing happened, and people moved to El Salvador and saw this like a Bitcoin colony where they could go and be completely free to use their money. And of course, that utopia did not work out. There was no Bitcoin city. I don't think they had... I think everything about El Salvador was just pure marketing that was trying to get more investors to come into the country. They didn't care much about Bitcoin per se. They just wanted some people with money to move there. And they got Max Kaiser to be their... I don't even know what he is, like a presidential advisor or whatever.
Their patron gremlin.
Patron gremlin. I like that. And it's just so weird. But I'm not gonna say that I'm happy that this ColdCard incident happened. I'm just saying that I'm happy that people are waking up and they're realizing, well, this was all a lie. Unfortunately, the best way to realize that people are LARPers and liars is going to conferences. And you're gonna see how they tap their cards when they pay for dinner. You're gonna see how they have fancy watches. Or I remember like 2 or 3 months ago, people were very upset at Jack Mallers. I forgot his last name. It's Jack Mallers, for having very expensive boots. And they're like, oh, he's not following the pleb lifestyle that he's preaching. I was like, what's wrong with you people? Like, I guess these people never actually went to meet these guys in person to understand, okay, their online personas are basically cartoon characters that are saying stuff just to make the movement look more legit or solid, but they don't really practice what they preach. And you, Joel, when you were on my podcast, I've actually mentioned that you do practice what you preach because you don't use banks. And that's like hard mode, or in and of itself, it opens up lots of side quests. You're a master of inconvenience, because right now I think the most convenient
is right.
The most convenient way is to just double tap on your phone. It brings up this bank card situation. You tap, and that's it. And for the record, these are not bank cards. Only one of them is. The others are like IKEA family card and whatever.
Yeah. Well, like, about that, my, compromise or whatever is the only reason I have this watch. I haven't worn a watch in many years, but I have this one because it's the only one that will allow me to do tap and pay with a de-googled phone. Because if you have a de-googled phone, you can't do that. And so I have the cards on it and stuff. More importantly, this is a Zebek card that's no KYC and reloadable. So I can throw some crypto on like 30 seconds before I need it. And so it's the easiest way to bridge wherever I can't spend crypto, really. But yes, I mean, it is like a different lifestyle. And I that's the other thing that I thought was funny, because I also, so for the most part of since 2015, 16, or since 2016 when I stopped using banks, the rule I kept to for almost the entire time was that I was also not going to use KYC. And so for like 8 or 9 of those years, I kind of did that. And then I started to use some KYC tools this year, maybe late last year. I don't remember exactly when it started, but I started to use some of those tools in order to learn so I could show normies what to do. And so, for example, I have this Coinbase card as of earlier this year, and I don't need it because I lived without it for a very long time. These blue ones here, and I wrote some posts about recommending that normies, if you're not going to use any of the other stuff that I use, if this is what it takes, get a Coinbase card so you can have your money denominated in crypto as opposed to fiat. And you can also just keep a little bit on there and throw some more on. And then otherwise you can live like your normal bank self with a bank card that you tap on things, and then you're fine. And people got really mad at me. Oh, shitcoin, this and that. And like they got very upset about that because I was giving people a real practical step of how to get more towards crypto than they were currently living. Again, people with bank accounts and full-on fiat, all their money for the most part in the fiat system, were criticizing me because I was saying, if you're not ready to go all the way, do this and you will get closer. And people don't like that though, because it pops the bubble. The LARP, the live action role play, is definitely strong, where I think that was one of the reasons why ColdCard was so popular, is because it looked ugly. You could see the gears and stuff. People are like, oh, I'm such a hacker man doing all this stuff. Like they felt, it made them feel
such
special.
A horrible user experience, but
they loved it.
Yeah.
Yes. Like if it's this bad, it has to be safe, It's so funny how that works.
Yeah, it's really weird. I remember when I tested it, and that's another reason why I disliked NVK, Rodolfo, because obviously this was after he sat next to me at the dinner table, and he was in my DMs all the time. He knew that I'm doing this article. It was the first of its kind in the history of Bitcoin Magazine, and I told him this because they only had like reviews of one product, but I told him you never had an actual comparison to present the trade-offs of each device. And I spent, I think, 2 or 3 weeks working on that, and the whole time NVK was in my DMs telling me, oh, how is it going? Don't you agree that Trezor sucks? Wouldn't you say that the ColdCard buttons are better and the experience is superior or whatever? Oh, you shouldn't trust that this device connects to USB and whatever. So he was just telling me stuff that he was hoping that I would write. And to me it was very annoying, because everyone else was friendly and professional. Even like the weakest device in the test, I think it was the Keep Key, which is a Trezor clone that in its time was much more premium. So you can tell by the materials from which it's built that it's like a fancier Trezor, but it did not benefit from the same development cycles, and it was kind of abandoned. So at the time it was a bit on the obsolete side. It was also the cheapest. I think it was selling for $50. But that's kind of an advantage, right? If you need something affordable. This was before 2021, when we had this boom of DIY hardware wallets like Seed Signer, Spectre DIY, Bowser, and a bunch of others. So it was interesting, but seeing that someone is trying to influence me, and I'm a very stubborn person. When someone's trying to tell me to do something, I'm really not gonna do that. And I purposely, I tried my best to not praise ColdCard too much, but also to not upset ColdCard. So I used a very vague language when describing it. Because on one hand, I was like, okay, fuck you guys, I'm not gonna waste my time with you. But I was also trying to be diplomatic at the time, and I sort of regret it. If I was writing that today, I would criticize ColdCard much more. I was trying to be nice to everyone and just present some advantages and try to tone down the disadvantages, because people are tribal anyway. Like the Ledger people have their own sort of way of flashing it. But to be honest, I think Ledger has the best marketing ever. I don't know how they did that, but at some point they were selling hats where you can put your Ledger inside and they were selling chains where you can hang your ledger. It's really crazy. Like, that's against any principle of being cypherpunk or trying to hold your funds in self-custody without anyone knowing. They're like, oh, we're embracing this. And it worked so well with the NFT communities and with the DeFi guys and everyone who couldn't care less about any of the cypherpunk principles. They sold a ton of devices. And to this day, I think I heard this somewhere that Ledger has like 60% of the market. Trezor has maybe 20%. And everyone else is fighting for the remaining 20%. So they're sharing that small
Yeah.
piece of the pie.
Well, I have to say, first of all, Ledger did a lot of what Trezor did at the base of it, but did more, like supported more cryptos, supported, had more nondescript looking devices. They had more models for a while. They have a lot of cool things. So like I had a Ledger Nano S way back in the day, and I used it, and I was happy with it, etc. It looked like a USB stick, but
Yes.
now people know what it looks. Now people could probably identify what that is. But before then, a Trezor looks like a Trezor. And if you're going to steal, you're like, oh, that looks like I can steal. But the Ledger didn't look as stealable. And I haven't really looked into Ledger stuff much lately because I'm less of a noob today, and also, the lack of open source and the Ledger recovery tool, like those kinds of things, made me not feel good about it. Anyway, I still considered having one to try out. Again, I will trust very few things, but I will use everything. I'll try anything out.
But they made so much money that they hired the
Yes.
guy who designed the iPod, which is POD, the
Yes.
music player. The guy who designed that worked to design a couple of Ledger hardware wallets. I think the Flex, and there's another one. I don't know what it's called because I don't use them.
Maybe money well spent, because when I looked back at the Trezor, the Ledger product catalog and stuff recently, they had some really interesting stuff. Like they had an NFC card that lets you restore your seed phrase with one tap. So it's like, all right, you lose your ledger, you need to do it instead of taking out your words, going ticket for a long time, inputting your seed phrase again. You just went beep and your seed phrase is back in there. I'm like, oh, this is fun. This looks, no wonder people like it. Like, it makes sense that Ledger is popular with more people. And I know
But it was so horrible, man. Like, it had these two buttons. If you wanted to confirm or cancel, you
Yes,
had to
I
press the
remember.
two of them. And the screen is so tiny that sometimes you couldn't see what you're signing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's back when my eyes were better too. But I've seen, it makes sense why they become more normie friendly, because also, first of all, if you're looking for a hardware wallet, like when you're a normie, you're like, oh, I have some crypto on exchange. I'm told I should self-custody. Let me figure that out. And then they look at a hardware wallet, and Trezor has reduced the number of coins that they support significantly. And so Ledger, no. So when you're like, oh, I have, this random coin, and you're like, oh, well, Ledger has it, so I'm going to get which one, Ledger or Trezor? Well, Ledger has the stuff that I have, so I'm going to just do that. Or I heard about these coins. Trezor doesn't have it. Maybe if I buy those, I'll need a Ledger, so I'm just going to get a Ledger anyway. So even if they don't need to store the extra coins, even if they only buy Bitcoin, they put it in there. The extra coins sell the normie who didn't make an intentional decision to be maxi. And then the convenience of their tech, I have to say, the Ledger Recover thing, from a user perspective, is a fantastic feature. From the perspective of someone who knows about not your keys, not your crypto, and is thinking, wait a second, you mean I'm letting a company do this? It doesn't make any sense, and it makes me stay away from the products. But from a normie perspective, it's like, oh, this is great. I heard about some guy who lost their seed phrase and they couldn't get their money back, and they lost 100 Bitcoin, and they could have retired forever on that. But I understand why Ledger is the market leader. Now, I have, on the other hand, seen Tangent Oh, you got the whole thing, huh?
I just looked in my drawer. These are the first 3 that I could find. This is actually the fanciest of them. It's like $400 or something.
Damn.
But I got a review copy. It's the Passport. And the reason why
Shout
I
out
like
Zach
it is
Herbert.
that it
Friendly
doubles
neighborhood
down
maxi.
as a 2FA device. So you can use this
Yes.
to replace your UB key.
One key
And it's
does
much
that as
nicer
well.
than the UB key. There's also the Trezor. This is the latest one, the Safe 7, which I received at their launch event where they invited me. Thank you, Trezor, for this. And it's really cool. Like, the quality of this and the way that it feels in your hand is very premium. I love it. And this is the good old Bitbox 02, which is Swiss-made, very basic in some ways, but also their software is much more advanced than their hardware. And this is much more affordable. It's like $100. The fun part is that I was contacted this week by someone from, I'm not going to say exactly who or from which company, but they basically said, Vlad, you're right about ColdCard. If you promoted our hardware wallet right now and told people that this is better and they could buy it, and you showed your referral link, you could probably buy your Supra, which is like my long quest of getting my sports car. And I was like, I don't want people to think that I promote or that I'm critical of ColdCard just because I want to promote something else and I'm financially motivated. And I think the fact that I refused to do it sort of gave more legitimacy to my writing and my tweets and whatever. Because once I say, well, use my ref code and buy this device, maybe I'm gonna sell a bunch of them. Maybe I'm gonna make a few thousands of dollars, but it sort of takes away from the weight of your criticism. People are gonna say, well, he was only saying this about ColdCard because he was trying to sell something else. And that's the stuff that Matt Odell said about me. I'm not a fan of Matt Odell, just like you have a long-running vendetta with Fluffy Pony. I have one with Matt Odell. I never liked the guy. I don't get his appeal. He's not a successful VC. He's not a great podcaster. He's not a great thinker. He just made a meme which is called Stay Humble and Stack Sats. That's it. What's his great contribution to the space? He didn't write anything monumental. I don't know. He never tried hard, but he's popular. And I was told this when I started my podcast, that I'm not the likable kind of guy. And for example, Peter McCormack looks like the guy you would want to go out for a beer with. And I just look like a nerd in his bedroom. But it worked out in the end. Like I have my own audience.
Yeah, you outlasted him for sure. And yeah, I don't know much. Like all these maxi influencers, I always sort of assumed not good things about. But the only thing I have about Odell, other than that I disagreed with stuff he said because he's a maxi, he sounded the alarm on Michael Saylor blocking certain ETFs.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Yes, and that's something positive, right? That I haven't looked into that, but at least I'm like...
to admit it, but yes, he did a good job there.
Yes.
Because he was invited to Michael Saylor's 100K party and Christmas party, and then suddenly when he posted that, he sort of outed himself from the club.
Yes, because... And the funny thing about that is I also pointed that out. Like I repeated that he said that. And it's good kind of putting it. Sometimes you would rather just wait around and see what the outcomes of these are before opening your mouth. There is a risk to opening your mouth because you could be wrong. I've been wrong before, and I think it's okay. I survived. But the fun thing about pointing that out at the time is now that Saylor's got together this consortium of dev funding stuff, now it's a little bit interesting and hypocritical. Like, why would he block ETF funding before, and now he's getting together with a bunch of groups to do dev funding? Like, did he not like the influence that they had in the network? Did he just want himself to be running whatever was going on? Or maybe he just wanted Bitcoin to not advance to where his products were the best way to use Bitcoin. And then after the whole world started to hate him after he's been selling Bitcoin like it's going out of style, now he has to buy back his cred by contributing. I don't know. Do you have any opinions on that?
That's not the way I see it. I think that Sailor is trying to control the narrative. And for a while, he pushed this idea that you should never sell your Bitcoin. He even got Trump to say it at the White House during one of these meetings. And then he realized, of course, it's a very stupid business model. And of course, he will have to sell at some point if he needs to. And now he's posting rap videos where he's bragging about, well, I sold some, but I bought 30 something X more than I sold. And look at me, I'm gangsta and I have huge returns on my STRC. And then he has the entire board of investors just dancing along. It's very creepy. Like, we used to laugh at Vitalik in Bitcoin. We were like, oh, this is pathetic. You shouldn't have to dance on stage to pump your coin. Look at us. Seriously, look at us. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And people are
so
just
funny.
numb to this. They're like, oh yeah, it's just our guy. He's pumping our bags. Doesn't matter. Just ignore him. He knows what he's doing. But you got to remember, this guy was called a cult leader during the dot-com bubble. And some people were calling him a bullshit artist. He's in the Epstein files, and he was too freaky for Epstein. Like he said, this guy has no personality. I don't like him. Don't invite him ever. Some people see something positive in this. They would say, well, he was not friends with Epstein, so that's good. But what does it even mean when someone says in an email, like, don't invite that guy, he gives me the creeps or whatever. That's what it says in the email. So he was even weird enough for Epstein. But then you have his involvement in Bitcoin, which I think he followed a very good, pun intended, strategy where he went to every podcast and wanted to use everyone's platform to boost his own until he got to the point where he became bigger than everyone else. And this was before he bought insane amounts of Bitcoin. Of course, he entered the space by buying Bitcoin, but before he even owned 100,000 BTC, he was going to every podcast out there. And I think I'm the only one who never had him. And I'm still not interested in having him because he's a bullshit artist. The only situation where I would have him is in a debate with someone I know who's gonna do a good job. But he also created, for example, if you remember 5 years ago, there was a brief moment when Tesla, and it goes back to BTC Pay somehow, Tesla accepted Bitcoin for payments to buy your new Cybertruck. And it only lasted for a couple of weeks, and then Elon Musk said, well, this is not good enough in terms of ESG regulations, which he later admitted was bullshit, but he never reverted his decision of delisting Bitcoin as a payment method. And Saylor started the North American Mining Council around the time. And the purpose of it was to have a call with Elon, and he did have a call with Elon, and they were trying to basically please him, to get him to establish a series of criteria, like at which point are you gonna consider Bitcoin again. I think Elon, with his companies, still has huge reserves of BTC for SpaceX
Probably,
and
yeah.
Tesla. But he doesn't seem very personally interested in this. If anything, I think I saw a recent podcast with him where he still mentioned that he likes Dogecoin much more.
Yeah, I
And
mean, that makes
my
sense.
point is that Saylor is trying to monopolize the narrative, put himself get a seat at every table, put himself, for example, you mentioned this $15 million fund that he created for Bitcoin development. And last week, I remember he also tweeted that he's not a fan of bigger blocks, he's not a fan of covenants, he's not a fan of... So he made a list of various upgrades that are being presented.
But he never
by
commented
developer.
on the tech before very recently.
No, but that was one moment, and it came like a few days after this fund was launched. And it's very weird because you have all of these developers who are waiting for Upcat or CTV or whatever to come out, and Saylor is against it. And after the ColdCard hack, I was actually one of the guys who entered these cringe maxi spaces where they were freaking out. And instead of dunking on them and telling them, well, I was right about ColdCard, I said, I don't think there's a better moment to activate vaults Like any opcode that lets us have vaults on Bitcoin could be beneficial because we can prevent any future events like this. And I had a bunch of guys agree with me, but I know that this is gonna go nowhere and people will just forget about this. The new cycle will move on and we're gonna get something new in a week or two. And unfortunately, we don't seem to learn lessons and react to the unfortunate events that lead to a lot of people losing their money. And it was painful. Some people lost their life savings and they trusted the podcasters and everyone who was saying that, well, ColdCard is safe. And it's the best one. If you're a Bitcoin maximalist, this is what you should have. And this is how you hold your coins in cold storage. And then the nastiest move ever was to blame it on the user for not rolling the dice. Being like, oh, you don't have 100 dice rolls for entropy? Well, it's your fault for losing your funds. I'm like, man, you have chips that can do much better random number generation. You just get two different sources, or you get a source of randomness from the user, from the typing or whatever, or the room temperature, can be anything. But you can automate this so that it's seamless for the user.
Yeah, that's something that's very the dice roll thing. I actually saw someone doing the dice rolls for entropy and handwriting stuff down, like literally doing the seed phrase generation stuff manually. I'm like, yo, like this is getting crazy.
I
Like,
tweeted about this. Like, imagine going, like, a scene from a restaurant where you have two friends having pizza, and one of them says, "I'm gonna pay for it," and the other one says, "Well, let me pay you back in Bitcoin." Like, I think that's how you got your first Bitcoin, right?
exactly. Chicago,
But-
September 2013.
Instead
It was a
of
Chicago
just
pizza, which is
installing-
not exactly a pizza, but whatever. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Instead of just installing Mycelium or whatever it was that you downloaded, blockchain.com wallet,
Yes, that's what it was.
you would have to roll the dice 100 times and write every input on a napkin, and then type that into your wallet, and then write down your seed, and then also play a game of Scrabble or something so that you can choose a long enough passphrase, and then you could receive your $5 of Bitcoin. And you could be like, yeah, finally. Like, imagine doing this to someone who's an absolute normie and he doesn't care. And he's like, do I really have to go through these circles? And it feels humiliating in some way. Like, just for a small amount, you have to do this. And people will say, no, this is only for large amounts, for life savings or whatever. You shouldn't have to generate manual entropy. We have chips to do this. It's like, I don't know, trying to break rocks with your bare fists.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a great way of gaslighting people because people like to do stuff manually, and I have to admit, I am a nerd. Wow, great revelation here. I do like to do weird things manually. Like, I like to, obviously, like, run my own local AI stuff. I like to do like free open source software and everything. When I wanted to stream this podcast to Odyssey, there was no plugin that let me do that. So I downloaded one that only had a Windows version, and I literally Stone Age vibe coded where a Linux version where I just took files from the download and just put them in different folders until it worked. And so that was before sad times before AI. And like I have an AI assistant. I'm playing around with something called Agent Mini that only supports a Telegram bot to communicate with it for your local agent stuff. And so I just vibe coded up a Signal integration instead. Just like obviously I like to tinker, it's fun, but I don't think other people should unless they want to. Like, if you want to roll your own dice and stuff, you can, but like to be expected to is just not okay. You shouldn't be expected to do any of that stuff.
No, it's really crazy. And I think this was just a way of blaming the user. And I also think that if you open the ColdCard when it came from the box, there was a sealed package that said, "Don't trust, verify." And some people will say, well, that was just part of the jargon, right? But if you look at it from the lens of the events that just happened, you can see that as a legal disclaimer. Like, well, we told you on the package that you shouldn't trust this and you should verify. Did you verify? No? Well, it's your fault. The code was there.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where, I mean, don't trust verify has been like everywhere in crypto, like especially the Bitcoin side of crypto. It's all over the place. So I know a lot of conspiracy theorists, for better or for worse. I do not consider myself one of them, even though I do entertain a lot of theories other people would call conspiracy. But I think there's a tendency with conspiracy theorists to basically come out for a confirmation bias, to basically say, what if this, and take every bit of publicly available information and stitch them all together and be like, this has to be right, where without ignoring that all the information they don't have that probably points to something else. So I don't want to do that. But on the other, so like every time they're like, oh, look, Beyonce's doing the Illuminati, whatever the Illuminati symbol, she must be in the Illuminati. Like, that is silly, in my opinion. However, there might be some credence to people doing admissions of guilt, kind of. Like serial killers leaving little clues or leaving like notes to the police. Haha, catch me if you can. Or, you forgot to find the last two. Or just things that harm their privacy. But they do it on purpose because they're either guilty or because they want to see if someone can catch them. And I might be willing to believe that ColdCard or whoever... Here's the other thing. Do you think, if we assume ColdCard was an inside job, which again, maybe not, but it might have been. If we assume that it was NVK in on it or not? Or was it Peter Gray and his pseudonym and all that who took advantage of NVK's kind of Rodolfo's like brashness and carelessness and profited from the back door? What do you think?
I think that given the situation, NVK will try to throw Peter under the bus and say, well, he was my CTO, he was in charge of all of this, and I did not know what's going on. So I think that's the most likely outcome given the evidence that we have. But I think he knew, because he was talking about stuff like retirement attacks or something, where a hardware wallet decides to sweep the funds from old users and go out of business or something. So that's very specific. Why would anyone talk about this? And the fact that he went on to delete a bunch of his tweets, that's also a sign that maybe he was on the phone with his lawyer or something and he was telling just remove all the evidence and we'll just pretend that whatever comes out there is a forgery, because nowadays it's so easy to make up stuff with AI. So if there's going to be a lawsuit of sorts, I think it will be very nasty with not too much evidence out there. At least not for Rodolfo being knowledgeable of what's going on. He will try to play it like, well, I trusted my employee and he was in charge of this and I was acting in good faith or whatever. But maybe it doesn't even go there, because I see a lot of apologists, a lot of guys trying to say, well, ColdCard were amazing and they did a good job and maybe we should blame the AI or whatever. Because before this, there are no known exploits, even though you have some very prolific researchers who may or may not be on the autism spectrum, but they did find on Reddit some claims from various users that go back as far as 5 years, 2021, where people were saying, well, I just lost my funds and I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I wrote down my seed, I made sure that I don't take a picture of this, that I don't say my seed out loud, and somehow my wallet got drained. And makes you wonder.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's also like confirmation bias with that. It's just like, man, I ate scrambled eggs for breakfast. I never do. I only do fried eggs. Today I did scrambled eggs and I lost everything. There you go. There's always those kinds of things. the thing that I think, if you're willing to like use logic to construct these kinds of things, I do think that this mass exploit here did not happen. I would say that it was not NVK like orchestrated. The timing wasn't necessarily orchestrated, I don't think. Because if you know, if it is an inside job and you'd rather do random thefts over the years rather than everything all at once, typically you'd want to do that. It does seem like after the thefts happen all at once, there's like the retroactive deleting of the tweets. You'd think that if you orchestrated this, you would cover your tracks a little bit more before people could get screenshots, and then you'd orchestrate the thefts. So if it was an inside job, I think that someone else discovered the exploit and either took the money, or the inside jobbers decided that they didn't have any more time. They had to go act on everything immediately and then worry. Like something happened to really advance their timeline based on that. Or, of course, they could have not had any knowledge of this. My idea of the inside job, so I still, if you were to hold a gun to my head and make me bet on what it was, I would probably narrowly say not inside job, just laziness and sloppiness, and they ended up, ignoring problems for too long. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not confident in that, but that's my strongest inclination. If I think it was an inside job, I think that they probably had it over the years and exploited it slowly over the years, and someone else discovered it, either causing them to steal the rest of it, or someone else stole the rest of it, and then that's why everything happened all at once and caused a big thing. Because I think that if, let's just say, Rodolfo and his team orchestrated this entire theft this last week or so, it doesn't seem very profitable for them, because even though they would have gotten all this Bitcoin, first of all, the company that they had is destroyed. They are under a lot of pressure from lawsuits and other things like that. People are watching the funds. They are prime suspects at this point, even if they're not necessarily suspects of stealing it. They're suspected of being involved. So I think that they can't really touch the Bitcoin if they have it. I don't know. It seems like this is not a good situation for NVK and team right now. So I would think that whatever happened right now was not up to them. Like, I don't think they initiated or they decided that this was all going to go down in the last week.
Well, yeah, and I think that also the way that they responded is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at their public communication, at no point did they actually say, we're very sorry, or try to apologize. They just said, well, we'll keep you updated. We're investigating. This happened. They tried to come up with an explanation about this, but they never actually apologized to their users. And I did see a couple of lawyers trying to find clients for maybe a larger lawsuit that might be preparing, cooking underneath. But I don't know where this is gonna go, because it's very delicate. There are so many legal disclaimers that are out there, including for the license, for the firmware, for the hardware. When you take it out of the box, you find this sealed bag that says don't trust, verify. And then they're gonna say, well, we instructed them to do dice rolls, and then Matt Odell is gonna come out and say, well, look at this video that has I don't know how many views, and most users use dice rolls, and that's why they're safe right now. But also, it was sort of like the Pfizer vaccine situation. You remember when it came out that they said, well, it's 80% effective against getting infected or whatever. And then they would come back in a week and say, well, it's 50% effective. Well, it's 40, it's 30. And then they said, well, maybe it will just help you get a milder case of COVID. I think it was like this. It just kept lowering the expectations for what you should get. In the beginning, they just said that only ColdCard Mark III and Mark IV are vulnerable, and Mark V and Q, which are the newer models, are safe. and then someone managed to pull off the attack on the Mark V, and they just had to move the goalposts constantly and update about what's going on, which maybe is a good look for them. It appears that they don't really know what's happening and they're taken by surprise.
Yeah, that probably makes sense to me that they would be taken by surprise in this situation. But yeah, let me touch on. Let me see, where is it here? Bolts, right? The whole bolts exploit. So there's an update. Bolts will stay disabled until further notice. Our API remains available to process refunds cooperatively. In any case, unilateral refunds will work, and they do not depend on infrastructure. Our sports team stays reachable. It says it's not a result of a single incident. Over the past few months, they've had a steady rise in automated AI system probing our infrastructure, and they've dealt with a bunch of exploits. So basically, we don't know how things will continue here, but they're going to go offline for further notice. So, as I
I respect that. I very
Yes.
much respect that. They did the right thing. They realized that they're overwhelmed and there's no way they can actually manage a situation where they're under attack, so they shut down the service and they want to collaborate to return the funds. It's actually a good approach as opposed to denying, and ColdCard is still being sold right now for full price.
Has anyone tried to buy one?
Yes, I know someone who bought a bunch of them.
Like in the last day or two?
Yes, on purpose.
It's so
And
funny.
they bought them so Mark Carpeles, of all people, was responsible for Mount Gox, and I don't know exactly how many bitcoins were lost. He decided he wants to buy every ColdCard and write a new firmware for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I understand it's fun, but like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think I would do that. Because the brand is ruined. So this is the entire thing is supposed to be a safe storage. That's the point of a hardware wallet, or at least I think it's more safe spending, to be honest, like 2FA. But the idea is safe storage, and if you have something that lost $120 million, I think that the brand is ruined for those purposes. But I think that if you want to use them as collectibles or something else, I think you have value there. For example, I would, every time I saw at the Bitcoin conference, I think this year, someone was running around with a BitConnect shirt. And I was like, oh, because like most kids these days, most people who, Bitcoiners who came in 2021 era and stuff, don't know what BitConnect was. And for me, I'm like, I remember that. And like, I would buy a shirt. I don't have a BitConnect shirt, but I would buy one. It would be great to wear on podcasts, It's one of those types of things. Also, it surprised me. I was in Toronto a couple weeks ago for the last blockchain futurist that will take place in Toronto, allegedly. And FTX had a booth there. FTX Canada is trying to make a comeback. And not, as far as I'm aware, not as a joke. They're just trying to be like, oh, the brand and the other stuff is good. We just won't scam people this time. I'm like, dude, can you imagine depositing money in FTX in 2026? Like, no, I cannot imagine that.
I remember it was a similar initiative with Mt. Gox, I think, or another exchange that got hacked, and they just decided that the brand is so well recognized that they're gonna revive it. Just crazy. Just pick another name. But
Yeah, that would be
I
my
do
thing.
remember seeing a bunch of Pulse Chain people when I was in Denver this year. But I think that's still going. It's not yet history. People still have hopium that I don't know how Richard Hart was able to engineer their minds to get them to behave in that way. But some of them think that just because they locked their coins for 20 years or whatever, they're gonna get stupid rich. But in the meantime, Richard dumped on them.
Yeah, I remember that. and I have friends who were fans of his or fans of Hex, and I was very like nice to them, but I think, yeah. The thing is, like, it's like also like a BSV type thing, because like I do think that Satoshi's vision is a very powerful sort of metaphor, because Satoshi had I am a big fan. I'm not a fan of BSV, the blockchain and the community around it, but I am a fan of Satoshi's vision in the literal sort of sense, as far as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system that you didn't need centralized intermediaries for, that would scale, that the whole world can use. And I'm a big fan of like the message in the Genesis block that basically says this is why. I'm a fan of Satoshi doing everything sort of anon and airdropping it to the world as like a basically doing something where if he didn't do it the way he was, he probably would have gone to prison. And crypto founders who did not go to prison only did not go to prison because Satoshi didn't go to prison, in my opinion. I'm a big fan of the whole Satoshi's vision. I do want to bring back Satoshi's vision as an idea once the BSV taint has sort of like been forgotten, especially because I don't know, there might, it sounds strange to say, but within the next 5 years, there might be a lot of crypto users and holders who don't know who Satoshi was. Like, they don't know what that name is. I think that, like, still the average, like, BlackRock investor or whoever who hears about Bitcoin, if they hear about Satoshi Nakamoto, they're like, was that the Bitcoin guy? Like, I think they would still know who that was, probably. But within 5 years, you might have a whole generation growing up on stable coins and Solana this and, Near, everything's on the Near network. They're using that. That was their first network. And then, like, they don't know who Satoshi was. And so I think that bringing Satoshi back will be fun because you get to go. It's kind of like the children these days, the Gen Z and A, I guess. I see, like, yes, the Gen Alpha people especially. I see a lot of Gen Alphas running around with Kurt Cobain t-shirts, and I'm just like,
No, I also went through this rabbit hole, like trying to understand why they wear that. Most of the times they don't even listen to the music, or they know a couple of songs. It's just that H&M and all of these low-cost shops are selling them, and they look cool. Like, the design of it makes them look edgy. I remember seeing a girl and she had a Nirvana t-shirt, and I was like, oh, did you ever listen to Nirvana? She's like, oh, I like Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I asked her, what's your favorite album? I was like, oh, I don't know. She said, the one with the baby on the cover. And I was like, well, do you know what it's called? And she said, no. I said, oh, it's Nevermind. Remember that. It's kind of important if you're wearing a t-shirt to at least know the name of the most famous album. But I think that's why, because they're very cheap and you can find them in these inexpensive retail shops and they look cool. Like, why wouldn't you want to wear that? Because it looks much better than the new designs. But what was I about to say? It's also important to mention some quirks about the ColdCard situation. Because right now, if you go to their website and you're trying to buy a new hardware wallet, they do mention that you need to update to the latest version of the firmware. But I remember reading reports that people who did install the latest version of the firmware, they bricked their devices. And that's a quirk with the ColdCard, because if you think about it, with a Trezor or a Ledger or anything else, if you type your PIN too many times, it's gonna reset to factory settings. It's gonna wipe all the memory from the device and let you restart with the setup. But with the ColdCard, it bricks. Like, if you type the PIN wrong too many times, it's gonna brick and it's not gonna be able to be used. And the question is why? Like, why would you want this to happen? Of course, it might be just Rodolfo's willingness to sell as many devices as he can. So if you have someone in your house who's playing with your ColdCard and tries to guess your PIN, then you're gonna have to buy a new one. And it's really crazy. And I think that's why they still keep them for sale, because you have people who installed the latest version of the firmware. It doesn't work out for them. They break their device and then they have to order a new one because they're afraid that they're going to lose their funds. Because nobody told them that you can just import your seed into a mobile wallet and then transfer your funds to another wallet which is decent. And it's all fine. You don't need to buy hardware. But people are so scared, and there was all of this paranoid marketing that they ran, and they're afraid of using anything that, first of all, is not air gapped, and secondly, is not connected to a full node. This is part
Yeah.
of the marketing and the psyop that limits the opportunities that people see in terms of how they can move their funds. And it's kind of crazy when you think about it. You realize, okay, my funds are vulnerable. First of all, getting a new device with the same seed makes you just as vulnerable. It's not about the device itself, it's about the device that generated the seed. That's gonna have low entropy even if you transfer to something else. So you need to transact your funds, to make a transaction to another wallet which has better entropy. And if you're a ColdCard cult member and you have a Mark III which is vulnerable and you want to move to the latest Mark V or Q, then what do? You're gonna have to pay $170 and wait 2 weeks for the shipping so you can move your funds. It's really crazy. But some people are stuck in this mindset.
Yeah.
Like if this was Apple, I would understand, you know? Like you're stuck in the Apple ecosystem and there's a bug. There's not much that you can do. You can transfer some files, but not all of them. If you want to fully migrate and you need a new computer, you have to buy something new from the same company. But with these BIP39 standards, it's much simpler. You just copy your key and you import the funds, you send them to another wallet, you're
Yeah,
done
for
with
sure. Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm a fan of these Tangent wallets. I don't know if you've used them before, but they seem to be very easy to use. One thing that they initially did not support any seed phrases, and that kind of the intent is to not do that. And for me, I never liked that idea because, you know, they say, well, what happens if you lose some cards? Okay, well, then buy a new set. Well, what happens if the company goes away? It's like, well, you can, then the app goes down. Well, you can build the app yourself and get your funds out. And like, yeah, or what about something that's interoperable? Like if you have a seed phrase, you can have your seed phrase in multiple apps at the same time. And so if one app, for whatever reason, there's an issue, you can move it, or you can just, you know, transfer over. It kind of makes it a lot safer. And that's the thing about safety. Like you don't want, I would say maybe there's three, from the user perspective, maybe three pillars of safety with your crypto. Is one, your device is secure, like how you're using it. You don't open up your wallet and it gets drained. Two, your backup's secure, like you don't have your seed phrase, someone can just guess it and steal it. But then the other one would be like interoperability, because if something's interoperable, then you don't lose your funds if there's a vendor that goes offline. And this something I've told, because we were talking about this kind of stuff a lot these last few days. I've mentioned this a lot, but a friend of mine, like a year or two ago, within the last year or two, messaged me and he's like, "Hey, I have a paper wallet. I got all my money on it. I want to go cash some out. How do I get into this?" And I'm like, paper wallet in 2024 or 5, whatever it was. What are you doing with a paper wallet? And worse, it was an Ethereum paper wallet. Now, Ethereum did not have a lot of paper wallets, and as far as I was aware, pretty much my Ether wallet was one of the only wallets that could access it. And my Ether wallet has been down for years. And so it was like, how do I get this guy's money back? Whereas if it had been a seed phrase, they've been standard long enough to where you can kind of do something about it, even if they're whatever goes bust. But yeah, now pivoting a little bit, BIP 110.
Oh no. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's happening tomorrow, but It's gonna be a hard fork, obviously.
I thought it was postponed.
No, they still want to push this, and they don't have much support. They're hoping, of course, their shepherds are saying that there's gonna be 100% support at the moment of the fork, which is hopium. And I know it's very profitable for companies like Start9 that are selling nodes in a box, because some of these guys are buying more nodes that they run from the same IP address, and they think that they're just gonna make it look like this movement is bigger. And there are also guys who are renting hash rate. And the Bitcoin University guy, what's his name? Matthew Crater, I think?
Yeah, Crater, something like that.
Crater. He's telling
Probably
people
Crater.
to rent hash rate to make it look like there's more mining activity that supports BIP 110. So they're burning their money, trying to signal to the rest of the participants that they're a real movement, and there are thousands of plebs who are willing to start a revolution. And these companies are profiting off of them. They're making a lot of money right now. It's just that I've seen Mike in space just now when you were talking. He's posting about his NFT collection that is ready to deploy whenever BIP 110 is gonna fork off. Like, these people figured out ways to inscribe JPEGs by bypassing Luke's filters. And this is well known within their circles that this is basically placebo. It's not gonna help in any way. But they're like, well, first you fix this hole, and then you fix the next hole, and eventually you'll fix all of them. But the only way to fix all the holes is to not allow any transactions. Because if you want to embed data in Bitcoin, there are so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 110 thing, I'm conflicted about it. I'm not conflicted about some things, right? I think it's like, I agree with some of the stuff, which is that Bitcoin should be money. That's the more important use case for Bitcoin. And I also believe that it has been hijacked by a bunch of interests. Again, but I'm more old school Bitcoin hijacking, Roger Ver, all that stuff. And I also, on the other hand, I also want to, I think it's really funny, and so I want to see him do it. But as far as like technical things, like if I think about the technical things and also the intellectual level that a lot of this BIP 110 stuff operates at, it's really lacking. Like, I don't think it will meaningfully impact spam or non-monetary things. I think it's impossible to really do that. You can just make it less useful. Maybe for some spammy cases, but just less useful. And there's no plan on like getting this used by millions anyway and like surviving. It's kind of like where it is. And yeah, I don't really see much. And also like the technical arguments, it seems like they don't know how the filters are going to work really. And when you point out that they won't, you don't get a lot of like intelligent pushback, or just like, oh, I didn't realize that. There's just a lot of, well, it's better than nothing, so let's do this thing. And just a lot of like delusion and stuff. And it's just such a weird situation where, unfortunately, a lot of people I like more than other people are involved in that movement. And unfortunately, it's like the dumbest. I don't want to. I don't want to be mean, but it is a very dumb movement. I think it's not going to go away. It's a little delusional, and I think people learn the hard way. And I posted a version of the Luke Jr. and Charlie Shrem like cutting the SegWit cake thing, where I just said, when Bitcoin already sucks his money, so you launch a shit fork that's somehow worse. So that one made me laugh, so of course I posted it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens. I think it's going to be like the idea that you have, the idea that like Bitcoin is like perfect and immutable and all this other good stuff, like the maximalist cult. But then you apply the ColdCard incident, Sailor selling, the bolts thing, and then you also apply 2 hard forks. One, which is not very smart. Like, I don't think BIP 110 coin will go anywhere. And then the other one, which is eCash, which or eCash SV, Storts Vision, which
There's a tweet with news about that one that came out like 30 minutes ago or something. So it seems like
is it
the
from
actual
the
launch
Storts account?
Yes, the actual
Okay,
launch
I'll
is
put
gonna
it-
happen on Halloween Day, which is Bitcoin's or the Bitcoin white paper's 18th birthday. And there's gonna be an alpha release coming out this month, and then a beta release. I think this is a response to the fact that maybe this wave of AI disclosed bugs has made everyone more cautious, and they want to test their software much better before they launch it. But also, I guess launching in the summer is not a good idea, and maybe marking a more significant day makes more sense in October.
Mhm.
You know the old saying, I think this is old investment advice, which sort of applies to markets. It's weird, but it works. It's called sell in May, go away. And usually the markets sort of peak in May and then they go down during the summer months. And afterwards in September, October, November, and until Christmas, everything seems to go up compared to the previous months. Like the summer months are the worst. That's when people go on vacations. They don't care about their portfolios as much. But once they return to office or whatever, wherever it is that they're trading, the prices go up again. So maybe it's better in some ways, but it's also like I was hoping that this month is gonna be like the battle of the forks. Maybe that BIP 110 will get delayed also. They're gonna chicken out and say, well, we don't have enough support, let's just milk this a couple months more. And with the eCash fork, I think maybe it's wise, but on the other hand, I wish it just launched so we could have this and then build on top of it. I'm actually excited. I'm sort of a bull when it comes to eCash because it's everything I wish Bitcoin could become. Like the everything chain that can have anything, can never tell builders, well, go away, we don't want this here. And all the transaction fees go to the miners. It's gonna be an interesting experiment.
For sure. And that's a thing, like, I had some debates on Lightning today, for example. And I think that, like, there is a path, as much as I believe in what I believe, there is sort of a path that layer 2 solutions could work, theoretically. But they'd have to have good user experience, and they'd have to both have good user experience, and they'd have to be economically viable in the long term. And that's one of the few things that BIP 300 or drive chains, etc., actually can do is get fees back to the miners. Now, like the thing with like Lightning, for example, the biggest problem with Lightning is the liquidity fragmentation, probably, which ends up making stuff centralized. But also, even if Lightning's wildly successful, it just does not pay the miners, and the network collapses eventually. And so, I think that like any kind of a side chain should contribute fees to the main chain in some way. Like you should get everyone paid. And if not, then it doesn't really, work out. So, like, I've always been a fan of BIP 300 as long as I've drive chains, as long as I've known about them. I think they're a good idea for not just Bitcoin, but things like Litecoin. I know Bitcoin Cash. I have some interview with Mathieu Huykens of Bitcoin Cash that's coming out relatively soon. And we talk a little bit about side chains and stuff on that. Even in Bitcoin Cash, some of them might make sense in some contexts. The thing about like forking Bitcoin for eCash, my personal opinion, and I think I told Paul this when he's on the show, I don't think that's going to work out long term on its own. Like I think that the way that works out is it pressures it puts pressure on developers to merge this into Bitcoin, and then that ends up being a thing. Because the alt space is too crowded, and a lot of the BIP 300 kind of designs were made for what I would call political reasons, meaning you get to keep the small blockers happy as well as like big blockers and the builders, the spam people, the no spam people, and you don't have those considerations outside of Bitcoin really. But so I mean, I hope it goes well. It is funny how I've never, I don't have enough Bitcoin to really get any eCash from it, but also I've never been paid a single dime to do anything, any kind of promotion or interview. And no one has accused me of this, except when I had Paul on this last time, I got 3 different people accused me of being paid to have him on. And it was mostly people from the other eCash Amari's vision. But it's just kind of funny how, like, you know, I don't know, just talking about it makes people accuse you of being a paid shill. So, I mean, but he doesn't.
Let me take my learnings from the whole ColdCard situation when Matt Odell was accusing me of getting paid by Trezor to FUD ColdCard when I was saying that their license is not open source. So whenever people call you out for getting paid, it means that they are the ones getting paid, and they are used to a situation where any kind of news that you present or any information that you show about someone is expected to receive a payment. So they can't even imagine a situation where someone acts out of curiosity or goodwill or just autistic obsession, and they assume that anyone who does anything has a financial incentive. And that just means that they live in this kind of world where that's what's happening, where they get paid for everything. So if they got paid to promote Amari's coin, it means that you must also get paid to promote Paul Cash.
Yeah, and it's also in a direct way too. The thing that's insidious that I might have written an article about at one point was, I think paid shills in some way are more honest, because as long as they're honest that they're being paid. Because if you're saying your job is to promote this online, talk about it.
Oh yeah, your biases are obvious.
Your biases are not obvious, but also the constraints are obvious, as far as, like, if you say buy this because if not you're a bloodthirsty murderer, then the company paying you is like, whoa, we don't want that on our payroll, we don't want to be responsible for that, can you tone it down a bit, be more respectful? Okay. So it keeps you in check of what you can say, but also you're paid to do the job that you do. You're paid to do it as well as will keep you getting paid for it. So sometimes if they're just like, do a good job representing the company or the project in these public statements and do this, as long as you do that, you don't have to shill above and beyond. Now, if you're a bag holder, now you have unlimited shill incentive, because the more you say, the more you get people to buy, the more unethically sometimes you say stuff to get people to buy your bags, the more money you make, and it's limitless with that. It's not like, well, you did a good job and you're good enough. And so I find that people who have bags are more paid shills than paid shills. At least the paid shill has like a barrier. And also, if you have a paid shill, like imagine I was paid by one of the eCashes, right? Let's say Paul was paying me to say good things about his chain or upcoming chain, whatever. I could take all that eCash and sell it immediately, you know, and have no financial tethering to this. Nope, tethering, pun intended. But then have no financial tethering to the success of this coin. As long as I keep getting paid, I don't care what happens to the coin. And so that means that when I'm off the clock, if I'm at a bar somewhere, I'm just like, you know, drinking a cocktail, and then someone's like, hey, what do you think of this eCash thing? And be like, man, between you and me, man, don't tell anyone I said this, but I think it's a piece of crap. Like, I wouldn't, then I go clock in on Monday and say, it's the best thing, you should use it, and I still get paid. Whereas if I had a giant bag of Litecoin, why not Litecoin? I'd be talking about it all the time. I meet someone in a bar and says, oh, I see the Litecoin shirt you have, not today, obviously, but Litecoin shirt you have on. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's the best. I think it's the sleeper. It's going to make you rich. And then the guy buys and I get more money. So the bag holder is the most insidious shill. On the other hand, there's a lot of crypto journalist type people, and I would not say in crypto, I would say outside of crypto, like Wall Street Journal type people that talk about this, and then they have a disclaimer that says, note, the author owns no crypto. And that's like an old school, that's like an old school way of saying they're not financially biased to this. However, number one, that biases you against crypto to the fact that you just don't believe in it. But second, it means you don't know what you're talking about. Like that's the biggest
Yeah.
I started
How
using.
do you expect someone to understand what's going on if they hold no coins? I remember
don't
at one
use
point
them,
that
yeah.
they started making disclaimers like just experimental amount of coins or just for testing purposes or whatever. So that they would imply that, okay, they played with the system, but maybe only used $10, but they don't have any significant investment in this.
Yeah, and I think there is some.
I think Laura Shin was saying this all the time, right?
Yeah. Now, I guess that does do something for impartiality, that part of credibility. But I don't think it does anything for credibility. I want an expert. And that's part of the reason why, like, I have never been a developer, really. I mean, I've vibe coded some stuff, but that's about it. Not really a developer. I'm not really like a financial guy or investor or VC or anything. So, like, who am I in crypto? Especially since the early days. And I am well, I guess you'd say an expert user, as it were, right? And so the fact that I use it extensively is what gives me, I guess, the expertise or credibility to talk about those things, to talk about using them. And that's kind of, I mean, the reason I started using crypto is because I was really interested in and believe in it, and that's the reason I continue to. But the side benefits of it are, what does this guy think about what works for payments? I'm like, well, I use these three or whatever, and they work like this. What do you think of the Lightning Network? Well, I use it in this way, and I don't think it stacks up to this because of that, because I have real experience in this. And I mean, no one's telling me about like all the money I have not lost. Like, what's your hardware setup, man? You must be like, no. But anyway,
Loaded, yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, definitely not loaded, but like also, as I do tell people, I have misplaced coins before, and like non-trivial percentages of my holdings, but I later found them again, and that taught me a lesson that like, oh, I can try to be too decentralized with my holdings and end up being my own biggest thief. You don't never want to be that.
You can do that with a cold card. Like if you do something very complicated, and it's very funny that people are promoting multi-sig nowadays, and they're saying, well, if you do a multi-sig, you're safe. There's no possible way in which you can lose your funds. But there's also the very likely outcome where you forget how you set everything up. And a very good advice that I got from someone is that you should practice the way that you recover your funds at least once per year to check your backup or whatever. Because if you hold it for multiple years and then you forgot what you did, and then you're going to look at the words that you wrote down and you're not going to be sure which one is the passphrase or whatever, like it's actually possible that you can lock yourself out. And maybe that your practice for holding long term is going to be good, meaning that the coins are there, but you forget how to access them. Or you have a typo in your passphrase or whatever, and then you're going to end up going to one of these firms. But I think right now with AI, it's much simpler. I've seen someone brute force his passphrase with a typo using ChatGPT or something. So that's more accessible nowadays. But there used to be these guys that were telling you that they can recover your coins if you forget your passphrase by giving them just some clues like what you're thinking about if you remember on that day and what kind of day it was and some details, personal details about yourself. And then I guess they had some algorithms that were automating possibilities for the passphrase. And then maybe they would crack it. But what I'm trying to say is that if you make your setup too complicated, you're going to lock yourself out. And to my knowledge, and I don't want to sound cocky, I don't want this to be like the video that people are going to show when something
When you get
gets
wrecked.
hacked. Exactly. But I haven't heard from anyone who lost his coins from using a mobile wallet. I mean, I did hear about Koinomi or something a few years ago that had a similar issue with entropy. And I think Mycelium also had a similar issue. But recently, like if you think about it, Cake Wallet, Edge Wallet, Unstoppable, all of these multi-coin wallets that are pretty solid, I haven't heard of anyone losing funds from setting up their wallets with BIP39 and keeping their seed somewhere safe. I think you can even have some very bad practices like copying your private key on the clipboard and pasting it into another wallet. You can actually do this with Cake and Edge and all the others. But I haven't
Yeah.
heard from anyone who said, well, I did this and I lost all my coins.
I actually know a friend who he complained that the Dash wallets don't let you screenshot your seed phrase. And I'm like, well, duh. I mean, it's a bad thing. He's like, no, I know what I'm doing. I just screenshot them and encrypt it and save it in some encrypted file. And it's way safer than whatever. I'm like, really, dude? I wouldn't do that. But I'm like, well, if carry a second phone and take a screenshot like that. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't. The thing is, like, a lot of the reason why I use stuff like Linux and Graphene OS and all that kind of stuff is because I don't want to be a security ninja. I don't want to have to think about all the different SIM swapping. Well, I don't have a SIM card. Okay, so I can't get that SIM swap. Like, I don't have to think about all these things of like, well, is my device secure? Am I being spied on? Because, I just do stuff that makes it simple. And so a lot of that's the same thing. With mobile wallets, I know a bunch of people who have lost or almost lost stuff because they didn't back things up. Like, I knew someone who I was like, here, register a Dash username. I'm going to send you some coins. And then they're like, oh, I lost my phone. I'm like, can I just get my username back? Like, no, it's tied to those keys. Like, you screwed up. And then, oh, yeah, well, never mind. I found it again. I'm like, okay. Or things like that. Like, oh, my device got wiped and I didn't back this up. Or, I wrote down my seed phrase wrong, or I wrote down part of it, and then I thought I'd remember the rest, but I forgot. Like, I know I've heard of people who lost their brain wallet, where they remembered their seed phrase and then didn't. And for me, that's like, I don't know, I kind of feel like I feel like the version of that is almost like a BIP39 passphrase, where you can remember a passphrase, but you're not going to remember your 24 words. You might store them in lots of places. For people who really want to know more about custody and stuff, yesterday on the weekly space I do on the Dash accounts, it was all about self-custody, and I had a few different modern custody experts jump on, talk about the modern multi-sig style solutions, and some of that stuff sounds pretty interesting. And I think that we're on the verge of getting everything fixed. So a few interviews are coming out on that too. But anyway, I have to get going. I have my wife wants to go out, so I'm going to do that. But it's been very fun having you on the podcast, as always. Always a
Thanks
good time.
for having me.
Yes.
I was just reading what Paul said about the 3 stages of the launch for his Zcash.
Mm-hmm.
He says that, so he presented 8 arguments, and now I'm just going to read this because maybe it's newsworthy. Maybe not. I'm not sure if your if your listeners are interested, but I will read anyway. It says this rollout has a number of big advantages, including allows us to wait out the current LLM bug chaos, still rewards people for being early participants, still rewards people for using Replay to drain exchanges on ECX. It now gives them a light whack instead of a huge crisis. Allows investors to compound their initial earned coins by using them to get yet more coins, gives us cover if there is some kind of big problem or disaster, allows us to better estimate the initial equilibrium USD to ECX price, and therefore the difficulty. It refers to the mining difficulty, which Paul has not made up his mind where to set it initially. Argument number 7 gives people something to trade, pump, speculate, practice on, etc. And finally, serves as the ultimate FAQ, since instead of asking does X work with Y, there is a real life demo we can point people to. So there's going to be an alpha release in August, a beta release in September, and then October there is the full permanent release at block 973,728. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Yeah, that's a good thing. Good time to put the fork in it. Follow Vlad on X at least at Vlad Costea. I don't think I'm glad he got rid of the, but even then it was the Vlad Costea, the Desert Links. Still worked. And watch his podcast, especially the episode I was on. But maybe if you already watched my show, you probably know a lot of that stuff anyway. Watch something that like with someone I wouldn't have on. I think I would have everyone on that you have out on, but that maybe they wouldn't want to be on my show. So, well,
No, don't say that. You gotta be more insistent. You gotta push them a bit. Because people do like to talk about their work. It's just that you gotta give them the right environment where they feel like, okay, I like this guy. I'm gonna talk to him and tell him all about my nerdy concerns. I think I'm gonna have Mike Belshi of BitGo next week, and I'm sure he's gonna talk about ColdCard and just make fun of everyone not using multisig, which is what his company is promoting. And I'm gonna have Jonathan Sampolinski, the guy on this side. We've recorded an interview this week. He came to Romania. We did a road trip. It was a fun one. So I'm gonna post that one as soon as I get 500 likes on my post on Twitter. I'm at 181 right now. And I also have a recorded interview with Amir Taki and Richard Werner. Richard Werner is a famous economist who wrote Princes of the Yen and came up with the term quantitative easing when he was working at the Bank of Japan. But now apparently he likes Bitcoin. He doesn't understand technically how it works, but he does seem to like it. And he comes to a couple of conferences every year. And I was able to interview him in a panel with Amir Taki, so that's gonna come out also. Thanks for giving me space to self-promote my upcoming episodes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thanks to everyone for watching. And I'm going to be cranking out a lot more interviews lately. I have like 3-4 that I need to upload recently, so they'll be out as well. And so a lot more than that actually. But see you guys around, and have a safe, happy weekend. And don't lose any crypto.
Don't use ColdCard.
Don't use ColdCard. But sponsored by not ColdCard. All right, bye-bye, guys.
Adam, we're here because we love you. And we're all tired of watching you get abused.
Abused? By who?
Oh, hi, I'm Visa. I charge you 29% interest, 3% foreign fees, and make you wait 3 days to see if your payment went through.
But I thought you were my friend.
No, Dash is your friend. Instant, private, under a penny, and with Dash Spend, you walk into over 100,000 stores and pay like a boss.
All ready? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. Feel alive, guys. This is awesome. Tastes like freedom. And I save 5% by using the app.
That's the Dash High, baby.
Let's go.
Download the mobile wallet, one tap, boom, financial sovereignty.